think and prevail in your fantasy football league with the help of our starting lineup. At host to quarterback the show, we have Nick Giacobbe. Up next, a dual threat in Dynasty and Daily Fantasy, we have Cody Repass. And finally, working the waiver wire, we have Nick Cap. These are your playmakers that will provide you with sleepers, breakouts, and busts to help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the debut edition of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, Nick Giacobbe, and joining me this week and every week are my teammates, Cody Repass.
What's going on, buddy?
And Nick Capsalis.
How's it going, Nick?
We're doing great. We're all doing great. We're excited to bring you guys this show to help you with your fantasy teams throughout the season, give you our predictions, our picks, and to help you prevail and win those fantasy championships, win some money, because that's exactly what's important every single fantasy season. But for us to help you, you have to help us. Go to iTunes, go to Stitcher, or go to Anchor to listen to the audio of the shows. Our audio will be up every Tuesday and every Friday. The Tuesdays for your waiver wires that are coming up, and the Fridays for your starts and sists and everything that you need to know for the weekends. We'll also be on YouTube on Tuesdays and Fridays. If you do want to watch the show, we have a lot of fancy graphics and other cool stuff that we'll have that will be shown on our social media apps. If you want to watch us live every Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we'll be on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook. That's where we're going to give you some daily fantasy picks. Cody, our residential daily fantasy expert, is going to help us out a lot with that. And me and Nick will be following along and also giving you guys some lineups. So we'll be giving you daily fantasy, some late start sits. If you have any questions, hop in the chat. We'll help you out with your lineups and any last minute decisions right before kickoff. So again, find us on Stitcher, find us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, and find us on YouTube and Anchor. If you want to find us on social media, the @ is PrimeTimeFFPod. You find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We also have a Facebook page that you could like, so please support us any way that you can. And if you do use Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review and a rating, because we really do appreciate that. Enough of all that. It's time to get into some news. We had some big news drop today. Cam Newton released from the Patriots. We thought he'd be the starting quarterback at least for a few weeks. It wasn't going to be Mac Jones, the rookie. No way. But apparently it is going to be Mac Jones week 1. Apparently Mac Jones is going to face Tom Brady. I think it's week 4. So, guys, how does this affect the fantasy value of both Mac Jones, Cam Newton? Cody, let's start with you first. What do you think this means for Mac Jones and the rest of that Patriots offense?
I think it helps the running backs and the receivers, the tight ends. I think it helps everyone. I'm not sure Mac Jones is draftable outside of maybe a 2-quarterback league, but the running backs are going to get more touchdown opportunities when you take Cam Newton away from that offense. Wide receivers are going to get more touchdown opportunities when you take Cam Newton out of that offense. I wasn't expecting it. I kind of thought if they really were going to turn to Mac Jones, that they might cut Cam Newton, because if they're going to turn to the rookie, why keep him on?
Nick, what about you? Any thoughts on Mac Jones' fantasy value, or even the players on the Patriots, Jacoby Myers, Damien Harris, anybody else?
So in terms of fantasy, Mac Jones is not someone I'm actively going to be drafting. But for me, I'm bringing Damien Harris up a lot. As far as it goes for the running back position in New England, it's been a crowded backfield for the past few seasons. And now that you do not have the rushing threat of Sony Michel interfering with the touches for Damien Harris, I'm very confident drafting him in deeper leagues where you can have him as a flex play or leave him on the bench and stash him for later in the season. Mac Jones is his rookie year. He's going to be in a division with 3 of the top defensive coaches. Obviously, Robert Sala's his first year in New York. But it's going to be a very tough division for Mac Jones, so I do not see him as draftable at this point. I think there's just too many valuable quarterbacks that can put up better numbers on a weekly basis.
So let me ask you guys a question. What is one position that rookie quarterbacks tend to lean on in their first year at least, or early in their career? Anybody know?
Tight end.
Usually the tight ends, and the Patriots got two really good tight ends in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, and that's a little bit of an issue when you have two of them. Who do you want to play? Because you don't have Kelsey and Jonnu Smith. You don't have Kittle and Jonnu Smith. You have Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, who I think if they were on different teams, if one of them was on the Patriots and one was on the Chargers or something like that, I think you'd have two guys that were very draftable. So I don't know which one I'd want more. I think Hunter Henry was very viable last year, so I think I'd lean on Henry. If you do need a late round tight end, I'm actually drafting in a 12-man draft right after this show ends the recording. So if I don't get one of those top few tight ends and I have to wait, I think I could lean on one of these tight ends and maybe they get me close to 10 points a week, 40 yards, couple receptions, something like that. So if I was to draft any skill position player from the Patriots or anything like that I think would have more value because of Mac Jones, I think it's going to be one of these tight ends. So going from one quarterback to the other, Cam Newton's a free agent right now. I think he'll get signed by a team probably as a backup, but he doesn't seem like somebody that wants to be a backup. So Nick, let's start with you. What team do you think is most beneficial from a fantasy perspective for Cam Newton to go to?
So in terms of most teams, for fantasy value, it's really going to hurt the running back position, putting Cam Newton into that lineup. It kind of reminds me, I think Detroit's a team that could use a quarterback. I'm not the biggest fan of Jared Goff. I could see him going to Detroit, and the same exact thing happened last year. When Adrian Peterson signed there, we knew that the touches for DeAndre Swift were going to go down. They also brought in Jamal Williams. I think that Detroit would be the best fit for Cam Newton. Cam is going to get the goal line work. That's what he specializes in. He's not the best. He's not the most accurate quarterback. He's not the most accurate passer of the football, but that is something that he has tended to dominate in throughout his career. So in terms of the running back position, I'm very heavily going to be dropping wherever he lands. I think it's going to be Detroit, though.
Yeah, I think if Cam Newton went to Detroit, I think that's one place that he'd be Superman to, because otherwise they might be going 0-16. Cody, your thoughts. What team do you think Cam Newton should go to?
I just don't see him getting a starting job anywhere, especially this late into preseason. For me, his arm's just shot. I think he's best served if he's going to get a job and a backup job. The best one probably out there for him will probably be the Cowboys with Dak Prescott's lingering ankle issues. He hasn't played any in the preseason. They play this next Thursday night against the Super Bowl champion Bucs. I don't know how healthy Dak is truly, and they might bring him in just in case. I mean, they just cut Ben DiNucci and Garrett Gilbert, keeping on a quarterback in Cooper Rush that has one completion in his career. So I could see him going there. I just don't see him going anywhere as a starter.
I think if he was going to go anywhere, and maybe not as a starter, I think he could go to the Miami Dolphins. I think they like Tua right now. I don't think they love Tua. And the Dolphins are a team that are good enough to make a playoff run. They're good enough to win 11, 10, somewhere between, I think, 10 and 13 games. I think they have the talent on defense, one of the best defenses in the league. I think Flores does a great job as head coach. I think they have a couple of running backs and a couple of receivers there that could really make some noise. So I don't think they're a bad football team at all. I don't think Tua is a bad quarterback either. I'm rooting for Tua. A lot of people are anti-Tua. A lot of people think that he's terrible, and he hasn't shown a lot, but he also hasn't been given a great opportunity, and he was coming off a tough injury. So this isn't a Tua conversation, it's a Cam conversation. But if Tua was injured or if Tua wasn't playing well, Cam's a guy with playoff experience. He was in a Super Bowl. He didn't play well, but he was in a Super Bowl. He's been to other playoff games. I think he's somebody that could help that team if they need a backup or if Tua goes down. So I think that's the team that I would go with. But we're going to switch gears now because we have an injury. Michael Thomas is going to the PUP list. He'll be out for the first 6 weeks of the NFL season, but that's only 5 games. He has to sit the first 6 weeks, but their bye is on week 6, so Thomas would miss 5 games. Cody, we're going to start with you here. How do you think this affects the draft stock of Michael Thomas, knowing that this ankle injury is lingering into the season?
I'm just staying away from him. I don't know what's going on in his head. I don't understand why this situation wasn't taken care of in the offseason. Apparently, he just straight up ghosted the coaching staff, the head coach. He ghosted everyone and then showed up to camp with a bum wheel. And I think when healthy, especially since Jameis Winston's a starter, if he is going to be back in week 7, he's probably undervalued at his current ADP. For me,
what do you think his ADP is right
now?
now? What do you think his ADP is? Because I think it was around 7 or 8 as of before this news.
Yep, I think in the last draft I did on Sunday night, he went late 7th, maybe even the last pick in the 7th. I think that is a great value for him if he's only going to miss 6 weeks. If your team is set up perfect, like if you have the perfect first 6 picks, you feel really good about your team, he's a guy you can take a risk on in round 7. For me personally, I don't know what you're going to get out of him. That's
the bigger issue. That's the bigger issue is he missed 9 games last year, and I think it was within after 3 or 4 games it was how many games is this guy going to miss, and we didn't learn till later on that season that week 1 the guy broke his ankle or something. It was something with his ankle. The injury's from week 1, and he didn't get surgery until I think June of this year. So I think that's the bigger issue is how serious is it. And Sean Payton said that he was above schedule, but I don't know. Nick, what about you? What do you make of Michael Thomas's fantasy value? I know we all have a draft tomorrow night. I don't know if any of us will take Michael Thomas, but you have a couple drafts as well. I think you still have 2 more left. So what do you think of Michael Thomas's fantasy value at the moment?
Well, clearly it's, taking kind of a cliff dive from where it was 2 years ago. He was a top 10 pick, coming off that massive season with Drew Brees. And, for me, I'm still going to be actively targeting Michael Thomas at his ADP. I know 6 weeks is tough to think about, but there's an extra game this season. You're going to get Michael Thomas for 10 games. What version of Michael Thomas that is, I do not know. But you give it 2-3 weeks on the bench. If he's ready come playoff time, that was still a top 10 wide receiver 2 years ago. We're not talking about an average NFL receiver. We're talking about someone that was an elite talent, completely recognized across the entire league. It's someone I'm actively targeting at his ADP. I currently have the rankings up, and players that he's being drafted just after are Deebo Samuel, Devontae Smith, Michael Gallup, Logan Thomas. Michael Thomas is the guaranteed wide receiver 1 in an offense with a top 5 NFL coach, one of the best offensive minds in football. And Jameis Winston might not be an upgrade over Drew Brees, but in terms of arm talent, he's got the bigger arm. He's going to sling the ball down the field more. Michael Thomas is someone that can bring you elite level play. And at that ADP, I just think taking him gives you so much of a higher ceiling as a fantasy team versus passing on him and taking one of these other guys.
I'm going to say a bold statement here. I think Jameis Winston is an upgrade over Drew Brees from a fantasy perspective. We look at what Drew Brees did last year, especially maybe even the last 2 years. Maybe 2 years is pushing it, but last year, Drew Brees wasn't a fantasy-friendly quarterback, whether he was the quarterback in your lineup or to the players that he was targeting, not named Alvin Kamara. Jameis is an upgrade. Jameis threw for 5,000 yards a couple of years ago, and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were, they were top 10 fantasy receivers. Mike Evans has had over 1,000 yards since he entered the league. Jameis can sling the ball around. He's going to throw 25, 30 picks, but I'm not asking you to start Jameis. I'm asking you to start the receiver. So I think Jameis might be a fantasy upgrade at that point. And an upgrade for one person is Marquez Callaway, who I think might benefit from this Michael Thomas news. He had over 100 yards in that last preseason game, 2 touchdowns, that one deep bomb with the pass interference. I got him 19th round in Dynasty. I'm very happy about that one. But Marquez Callaway, where does he rank you guys for sleepers now? Because I think he went from about 180 to 120. So, Cody, what do you think of Callaway now as a sleeper? Do you think this actually adds to his value, or does the fact that he's now facing that number 1 corner for 6 weeks kind of hurt his value a little bit?
I think he's still undervalued. With just like what you said, Jameis Winston is an upgrade to Drew Brees. Drew Brees had a noodle arm last year. He couldn't push the ball down the field. Jameis Winston loves to throw the ball down the field. He's not afraid of any coverage. He's not afraid of any blitzes.
He's not afraid of interceptions. He's not afraid of interceptions.
Sean Payton will help him fix that. That is one thing that Sean Payton said. He will not put up with Winston throwing the ball to the other team so many times. And I kind of believe him. I mean, I don't know how much you can with a gunslinger like Winston, but Callaway, for me, he keeps creeping up my board. I don't own him anywhere but in a couple dynasty leagues. It just seems like someone snipes him a couple picks before I can get him. But I truly believe he is going to be probably a high-level wide receiver 3, maybe low-end wide receiver 2 until Michael Thomas gets back. And then I mean, you just don't know with the Rappaport he could bring with Winston. He might hold true to that even with Thomas back.
Well, again, even like the Bucs, they use Godwin and Evans, and Jameis had other guys around him. So, I mean, just that opens up, no more double teams at that point. He's got to throw to both of them. Nick, your thoughts on Marquez Callaway?
I'm in the same exact boat as you guys. I think Callaway's value, even at the 120, is still undervalued. I think that, with a top 5 offensive coach in football, you're going to get a bigger armed quarterback. Whoever is the wide receiver 1 on that team is going to have production. Being drafted at the 120 is around the wide receiver 50 mark. Marquez Callaway will not finish as the wide receiver 50 in the first 6 weeks without Michael Thomas in that offense. That is criminally undervalued right now.
Well, that's enough of the Michael Thomas talk. We're going to go to yet another injury. J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, went down. Very unfortunate for my dynasty team. Drafted in 3rd round, so I'm not thrilled about that one. A lot of fantasy owners and a lot of NFL fans not thrilled about that one. It's a big loss for the Ravens and for the fantasy community. So, Cody, let's start with you. I think you also have J.K. Dobbins. So, how does this injury affect that Baltimore Ravens offense from a fantasy perspective?
I don't think the injury is really going to affect them that much. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins is a fantastic talent. I hate to see him go down. It hurt my big money redraft league. I drafted him in late 3rd round.
He's gone for you. I got him in the dynasty, so he's mine. But he's gone for poor Cody.
Yeah, it sucks, but I mean, injuries are a thing. I mean, they happen. There's nothing you can do about it. You just got to keep going. It sucks that the year hasn't even truly started yet, and you're without a 3rd round pick. But I believe with Gus Edwards moving in, they'll be okay. Where I think it could hurt them the most is going to be in the passing game, because Dobbins is such a great pass catcher out of the backfield. You're going to have Lamar running his read option. Really, any back can step in there and be okay. They have such a great offensive line, such a great run game. They're going to be fine with whoever. I think the biggest area that they're going to be down is going to be as a pass catcher out of the backfield.
Nick, your thoughts on the fallout from J.K. Dobbins?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm very much struggling right now to see how Baltimore is going to continue to move the ball down the field and get into the end zone. We obviously saw the touchdown regression last year from Lamar Jackson. I think he's more talented than where people have him right now as an actual NFL player. So I think that they will find a way to be, a contending football team. But obviously wide receiver has been a gaping hole for them for a couple of years now. Marquis Brown did not perform as well as we expected. Bateman went down with injury. That team has really suffered throughout the past 4, 5, 6 weeks. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. Gus Edwards is obviously someone that's moving up the board, and I really think that it's going to depend on how much confidence you have in Mark Andrews as a tight end, Lamar Jackson as the quarterback, and how you think that Harbaugh can figure out this offense. As well as he can do is as well as his offense is going to go. For me right now, I am avoiding Baltimore players in the draft, but at the waiver wire, I will be looking to see who is bringing the team down the field.
So let's speak about Gus Edwards a little bit. Probably the biggest beneficiary. I think his ADP right now is round 6 or something like that. He's going with Chase Edmonds and I think a little bit behind Chris Carson and I think who's Cody, the running back on Denver. He's slipping my mind at the moment.
Javonte Williams.
Javonte, yeah, he's in that range too. I have him in Dynasty, and I'll slip my mind. So let's talk about him a little bit. What are your thoughts on Gus Edwards, Nick? Where would you want to take him? Would you even want to take him in your draft at this point?
Like I said, he's not someone I'm actively going to be targeting. I could see Harbaugh bringing in a veteran in the backfield like a Todd Gurley or a Le'Veon Bell to try and carry the load a little bit more. I think that would also be a better complement to Lamar Jackson than Gus Edwards will be as the running back 1. So I'm not going to be targeting him, but right now at his ADP without another running back in that backfield, I think it's appropriate. I think he's a fair draft take, but I think I will be avoiding him for that reason.
And Cody, your thoughts on his current ADP? Is he somebody that you think people should be targeting?
He, in my opinion, he's right where I personally would have him. He's a back-end RB2. He offers little to no value in PPR leagues, extra value, I should say. He's not going to catch a ball out of the backfield. He has stone hands. He might have worse hands than Derrick Henry. The deal is Harbaugh loves watching him run the ball, and he runs the ball well with Lamar Jackson, but he's always been limited to 10 to 12 touches. I don't know how his body's going to react if they don't bring in somebody to an 18, 19, 20, because the Ravens are going to run the ball. They're going to try and throw the ball under 20 times a game. I mean, and I just don't see Gus Edwards holding up. And if you're in a PPR league, back into RB2, I would much rather have I'd take a risk on Chase Edmonds. I'd much rather have Javonte Williams for the upside down the road. Chris Carson, always a premier level back if he stays healthy. I like to target guys who catch the ball out of the backfield, and Gus Edwards, he just doesn't offer that at all.
Yeah, I think my other issue is I think they have other running backs they like. They have Justice Hill, they have Tyson Williams, they have both of them, and I think they're going to have a role in this offense. And Lamar Jackson also runs the ball a lot, especially in the red zone. I don't think Edwards is going to get a lot of touchdowns. I think Lamar will take most of those touchdowns on a nice read option. So I think this could even benefit Lamar's fantasy value more than it benefits Edwards in a way, because they'll put him in the game thinking that he's going to score, and then they're going to fake it. So at this point, he's not somebody that I'm going to target, because I think somebody's going to look at him and say he's an RB1, and I don't think he's an RB1. I wouldn't target him as an RB1, so I'm going to avoid him in my drafts at least. So something that I did want to get to before we got into our last segment, which is going to be our top 5 players in drafts that we should avoid and our top 5 players that you should target. But before we get into that, I do want to introduce ourselves a little bit and a little bit about each other. So Cody, we're going to start with you. Let's talk about who you are, your NFL team, how long you've been playing fantasy, anything you want to share with our listeners for the first episode.
Hello, everyone. I am Cody Repass. I have been playing fantasy for, I started playing in 2010, so 11 years. I started a home league in 2010. That league has since exploded. It started as a $50 buy-in. It is now a $250 buy-in. We have a waiting list. There's people that have been waiting years to join. We have had the same 12 for, I believe, 5 years now. I play daily fantasy sports pretty much all year. Football, basketball, it doesn't matter. Dynasty is my bread and butter. I love Dynasty, especially in football. My favorite football team is obviously the Denver Broncos. I mean, I'm wearing the Super Bowl 50 shirt. I had to bring it out. It's been sitting in my closet for way too long. But I'm just happy to be here. I love talking fantasy football. I love talking fantasy sports with anyone that'll listen. So being on here with 2 guys that kind of know their thing, I'm really excited for it.
So Cody, how many leagues are you playing in at the moment for this season? How many leagues are you going to be talking about on this show?
I am currently in 4 redraft leagues and 4 dynasty leagues, and I probably won't talk about my best balls just because I'm in so many. I average about 20 of the BB10s, just $10 entries. And then on DraftKings, I do about $300 or $400 worth of best ball entries every year. When fantasy football season rolls around, I am easily over the $1,000 threshold every year.
And give me your biggest fantasy win and biggest fantasy failure, whether it's a week, a bad decision, whatever it is, a championship.
The biggest win, I went back-to-back in my home league right after we made the transition to $250 entry. I've had some good wins in DFS over the course of my career, especially here. This preseason has been fantastic. I won $1,000 on Sunday playing the Jacksonville Cowboy Showdown. I won $250 on Friday night on the Indianapolis and Panthers Showdown, I believe. Biggest fantasy loss, I was in a $500 fantasy league for 3 years. The first year was when Tom Brady tore his ACL, and I was dead on arrival, first week of the season. So threw $500 down the drain. The second year, show up, get in there, have the best team, show up to the championship game. It is winner take all. You win $5,000. I get in the championship game. My team is dominant all year. I think I lost one game. The guy offers a split. I tell him no. I lost. Year 3, play the same guy in the championship game. I offer a split. He says no. I am winning with my kicker about to kick an extra point, and he misses it, and I lose by half a point. I left that league with my tail between my legs, utter disgust. I wanted to quit fantasy. It was the hardest. Like I knew I could play with quality players then, but being that close, I mean, I lost out on $7,500 in those 2 years, and it was rough. I mean, it made me a better drafter drafting with those guys, but I will never, ever, ever forgive Justin Tucker for that. Ever. He is forever on my garbage list. If any of my leagues had kickers, I would never own him.
This one our league has a kicker, so maybe Tucker will end up.
I ain't taking it.
Me and Nick have been in the same league this will be year 6 now. We've been playing fantasy for a while. I know Nick's biggest fantasy blunder that he'll speak about in a moment, but Nick already introduced you, but talk to us about your favorite NFL team. That's got to be the New England Patriots.
Big Patriots guy, big Dolphins guy. Unfortunately, I picked the wrong end of the apple in that division. What's going on, guys? My name's Nick Capsalis. You can call me Nick Cap for short. I am a recent college graduate. I studied sports management, and as you can tell by me being on the show, I love sports. I love fantasy football. This is my 9th year playing fantasy. I mainly do redraft leagues. The closest to dynasty I came is doing a keeper league with these two. That's about it. That's pretty much it. I got 5 leagues of importance, and then my home league, which, I got to beat mom and dad for that one. So hopefully I could remain reigning champ for that one.
And Nick, your biggest fantasy win or biggest fantasy failure?
My biggest fantasy, I got quite a few blunders, but so we'll start off with a win. Last year, very important money league, not this one, another one. Went to the championship, had a big matchup, decided to split because I was nice because it was one of my close friends. I winded up edging him out in the end, but I was very happy to split the money with a good friend of mine. Got a couple big blunders. I got one. I was in a 14-person league, went undefeated the whole year, championship week. Couldn't pull it off. Couldn't pull off the perfect season. I had a fantastic matchup with Nick last year, where the two of us were cursing our own teams out because of how hair pulling it was. Then Tyreek Hill faces Tampa Bay, and the switch flips with our bonuses. He gets a nice 65+ point week, flips the script, takes me. It's a big shame. But yeah, that would be my biggest wins and my biggest blunder.
You're not going to talk about the blunder in the playoffs?
What blunder in the playoffs?
The tie?
Oh my God! Don't get me started. Okay, I'll talk about this real quick. So, I came at Nick, who is our commissioner.
This was the year that I won the championship. Actually,
this was the year you won the championship.
This was year 2, so we were still working out the kinks and everything. So I was the one seed.
Out the kinks.
I was the 1 seed. I had the most points, not to brag, but Nick had a very good football team. He must have been the second, third, whatever he was. He had a good football team. I
finished up third. I think it was the semis of the playoffs, maybe the first round.
I had the bye, so this must have been the first round.
We were he was the 4 seed. I was the 5 seed. We had the same record. I had more points than him, but he winded up getting the tiebreaker because he had the head-to-head win on me. And for those of you that don't know, ESPN automatically sets it. So whoever the highest seed is in the playoffs, when you tie, moves on to the next round. 155 to 155. Rex Burkhead for him scores 15 points and ties the game up and winds up taking him to the next round.
I think that was all in the first half too. All 15 points in the first half of that football game.
Then Bill Belichick says, "On to the next guy."
That's why you do. That's why you do decimals, and I learned my lesson.
That is why we do decimals now, because I had a lot of guys with 59 yards.
Yeah, we learned our lesson. I'm Nick Giacobbe. I'll be hosting the show every week. I'm a recent graduate of the Dan Patrick School of Sports Broadcasting at Full Sail University that I'm very proud of. And this is my next step in my career to try to become a fantasy analyst. I've been playing fantasy football for since 2010, 11 years now. The reason I love those guys, my favorite football team, which is not the San Francisco 49ers or the Los Angeles Rams, is because of Beast Mode, who helped me win my first championship in 2011, all those years ago. So that's why I do love the Seahawks, and that's also why I love fantasy football. So my biggest win has to be a couple years ago when we did our draft in July. A friend of ours was going to the military, so we had to draft in July. I took Kareem Hunt in the 10th round. I took Le'Veon Bell in the first round. This is Kareem's rookie year. And I got Alvin Kamara off of waivers. I had a three-headed monster at running back that just ran through the whole league. I was 200 points above everybody or whatever the whole season, never had to worry about it. And even the championship week, I think me and my opponent actually both underperformed, but I did edge him out by 20 points or so. So that's my biggest win. I think my biggest blunder is I went against my own draft strategy. My draft strategy usually is to take the best player, usually a running back in the first round, but take the player that you're confident in. I really wanted a running back. I went with Le'Veon Bell with the New York Jets. On the wrap, I took the best receiver available, who was good old Antonio Brown. My season was dead in the water.
Man.
My season was dead in the water by week 3. The only good thing I did that season was I drafted Chris Godwin as my breakout player. That's the only thing that I absolutely nailed. So that's all of us. And the other thing is that we're actually going to go live during certain games, especially if we're playing each other. We're going to go live and react. So you're going to see some failures and you're going to see some big wins depending on the week. So we're going to see how that goes, but that's us. I'm glad we got to introduce ourselves, and we're going to get into our last segment of the show. We're each going to give you 5 players that you should target, 5 that you should stay away from in this year's draft. So first off, we're going to start off with players that we think you should be targeting and looking at in the draft. Cody, we're going to start with you. Who are 5 players that you think that need to be targeted in all fantasy drafts?
Kicking it off at number 5 for me, yes, he is a player on my favorite team. It is Jerry Judy. He's being drafted at wide receiver 30. That is a mid-level wide receiver 3. For me, with Teddy Bridgewater being announced as a starter, he very, very, very well could end up being a high upside wide receiver 2. He fits the mold of what Teddy Bridgewater loves to do. He's a fantastic route runner. He's got the short yardage routes on lock. Teddy Bridgewater will look to him early and often in camp. That's all everyone was talking about, was how unguardable Jerry Judy was. I love him as just a supreme upside play. Going on to number 4, we've got Justin Fields. He's a guy that can win you a championship later on in the draft. I like to take a quarterback ranging in the 8 to 14 range, someone I'm going to talk about next, and pairing them with Justin Fields, a Trey Lance, a Trevor Lawrence, a high upside guy that could come in later on in the season. You're not going to have him as a starter right away, but he can come in. He offers you the high upside rushing floor. He's also a fantastic passer. He's going to make Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, another guy I'm going to talk about later, he's going to make them better. I just don't see Andy Dalton being able to hold on to that job for very long. I mean, you traded up, you gave up so much for Justin Fields, he's going to play. And then going on to my number 3, Jalen Hurts. At quarterback 10, I just think that's too low on a guy that's going to get a ton of rushing attempts. He's going to run the ball. He's a new Cam Newton around the goal line. He is going to get rushing touchdowns. He's an average passer at best, maybe. I don't think he's that good of a passer, but hey, this isn't real life football. This is fantasy football. Jalen Hurts should be on your fantasy team, and especially if you can get him at quarterback 10 in your drafts. My number 2 player to target is Antonio Gibson. I am extremely high on the kid out of Memphis. He is arguably my favorite running back to target, because if people are drafting him as RB11, I honestly believe he could finish as a top 5 running back. He's not going to get the third down work to begin the season, but by the end of the season, he will be a 3-down workhorse, in my opinion. He's just got fantastic hands out of the backfield. He's a great runner. He has great vision. But my number 1 player to target, he pairs so well with Justin Fields. It's Darnell Mooney. You can almost get him for free at where he's being drafted. It's ridiculous. If you look back to last year, he is running wide open down the field on so many routes, and Mitchell Trubisky or Nick Foles just miss him. They not even close to catchable. Justin Fields won't miss those throws. Darnell Mooney is a very, very high upside sleeper that I would recommend chasing in round 8 to 9. Maybe if you're at the turn at the end of the draft in round 8 and 9, he is a guy that I have everywhere this season. He's my breakout star.
So that means I should be taking him round 8 tomorrow in our draft because I love him too.
You better not snipe me.
We'll see what happens because I love him too. He's in my dynasty league. I'm very proud of that one. That's another one I like. Nick, let's go to you now. Top 5 guys that you like this year to target.
So I know Desean Watson, he's getting this bad rap, and I'm not going to analyze him for obviously the off-the-field stuff. But right now at QB 35, this is a guy that's finished as a top 5 quarterback for the past 3 seasons. If a trade is to happen, Desean Watson on a weekly basis is going to be a top 10 quarterback. Right now, there is no suspension being faced, and where you can draft him is the last round of your draft. And the round before, you could get the number 1 defense, number 1 kicker league, most likely. You can grab Watson, stash him. If you have someone like Hill, who you know is going to be reliable every week, Desean Watson has the upside on top of him. That's a player I'm looking to target late. Chase Claypool, I think he's going to have the biggest year 2 breakout out of all of these young wide receivers. Even though CeeDee Lamb, I like him in his position, and Brandon Ayuk, I think Claypool, the size that he has on that offense, where Mike Tomlin is going to make that offense keep going until the last second of the fourth quarter, Chase Claypool is going to have a ridiculous workload, just like Juju and Deontay. But I think Claypool has that extreme talent level. Juju came in on that small contract year round, and I think Claypool they see going forward. Next, I have Tyler Higby. You get a massive upgrade at quarterback. I like that entire Rams offense this year. Tyler Higby is being drafted as the tight end 13. He got a massive upgrade. They let Gerald Everett walk. It is his job right now. He is practically, in my eyes, guaranteed to finish as a top 10 tight end in fantasy. Number 2, I have Robbie Anderson, wide receiver 28 off the board. Robbie Anderson finished as the wide receiver 19 last year with Teddy Bridgewater, who has a smaller arm. Robbie Anderson is a burner. You're giving him Sam Darnold and Matt Rule. Sam Darnold's got the bigger arm than Bridgewater. He's going to sling the ball downfield. They're going to find a way to get Robbie deep. I think Robbie's going to have a lot of targets this year, and he presents the upside of getting that 80-yard touchdown that's going to win you a week almost every time he gets one of those. Trey Sermon is the number 1 guy that I'm targeting. He's a rookie running back for San Francisco. Right now he's being drafted at the RB 40. The 49ers have struggled to stay healthy in the past few years. Right now, the number 1 guy for them is Raheem Mostert. He's had his problems staying healthy as well. As much as I like Mostert as a talent, he could not stay healthy on the field, and Trey Sermon is the number 2 on that team. Tevin Coleman's gone. Jeff Wilson looks like he's going to be the number 3. It feels like Trey Sermon is the future of that backfield, and that team, no matter who's in there, Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance, is going to run the ball. And I think Trey Sermon is the guy where he's being drafted as an RB4, has the upside of breaking into the flex play or potentially an RB2, depending on how they decide to use him.
Speaking of Justin Fields, my list does want to load. I'll start talking about him, though. Justin Fields is the number 5 on not Fields. Trey Lance on the 49ers, not Fields. That's Cody's guy. Trey Lance is my guy, though. I've watched him sling the ball around through preseason, especially yesterday during the preseason game, and he just has a rocket of an arm. I could see him tossing it to Debo and Ayuk and Kittle, who I have in my dynasty league. And as a Seahawks fan, Trey Lance scares me. I don't want to play this guy for the next 10 years because this guy can run. This guy can pass. He's a big body. He's not afraid to sling it out. He's everything that I don't want to face twice a year. That's a football perspective. From a fantasy perspective, Jimmy G's not going to have this job by the end of the year. There's just no logical reason unless Kyle Shanahan wants to be nice and let my Seahawks waltz into the playoffs. There's no reason why Lance shouldn't have that starting job. And when he gets it, I think he's going to go berserk. I do like him better for Dynasty. But I think Lance, if you get him as a backup, if you grab, a guy like Dak Prescott, or if you grab Lamar Jackson, I think Trey Lance is somebody who you should definitely be targeting as a backup. At number 4, I have Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams was a big vulture against Aaron Jones last year. Aaron Jones would get them to the 1, and here comes Jamal Williams to scoot it in, or here comes Devontae Adams. And Jamal Williams is now in the Detroit Lions with DeAndre Swift, and Swift has some injury issues. He's had something going on with his groin, I believe it is, since 2018. He's had a couple different injuries with it, and it's aggravated again this preseason. So Swift is going to play, but if this groin injury is something that lingers and Jamal Williams takes that rollover at some point, you're getting a starting running back that's being drafted currently in the 11th round, I think at 102. This is somebody that you should stash late in the draft. There's not many guys out there besides, like Cody mentioned, Darnell Mooney, and there's a couple other sleepers out there, but I think this is a running back that could be really beneficial to you later in the season, a couple weeks in, even just a flex play when you have a Saquon Barkley or Alvin Kamara on bye. This is somebody that you could definitely slide in there. And I think he's going to also get more of the goal line work than DeAndre Swift will as well. At number 3, I have the Bills wide receivers. The Bills offense is just going to be ridiculous this year. Josh Allen's going to pass for 5,000 yards. He's going to have 45 touchdowns, I think. He's going to be tossing around the guys like Stephon Diggs, and the other 2 guys that I have here. The picture that you're seeing is Gabriel Davis, who I like a lot, but also Emmanuel Sanders. Gabriel Davis and Emmanuel Sanders are currently both being drafted around the 15th round, which is ridiculous for guys that are probably going to get 5 to 10 targets a game. They could each get 40, 60 yards, a touchdown in there. That's a really good flex play. That's 15 points in your flex, basically. So I think Davis will be the number 2, but even Sanders might be a guy you want to take a fly on. Cole Beasley's being drafted a little bit earlier, but I actually like Davis and Sanders more than Cole Beasley. Number 2, I like James Robinson, and I love James Robinson when he was being drafted in round 8. I don't like him. I still like him, but I would have liked to get him in round 8, not round 3 or 4, where his ADP is currently. He was in the 1,000-yard back last year. There's no reason why he shouldn't be in a 1,000-yard back this year with a better offense, with a new rookie quarterback that needs to lean on the run game. There's a new head coach. He's going to get all the goal line work. Etienne was always going to get the passing work, but Robinson was always going to get that goal line work. And I think, again, 1,000 yards. He had 7 touchdowns last year. I think he gets close to 10, something like that this year. So I think Robinson's going to be a really solid pick if you're picking there. And you don't want David Montgomery or, you don't want Chris Carson. I think Robinson's a solid one. And at number 1, I have Robert Woods, who I think is going to have an absolutely monster season with Matthew Stafford. Stafford loves to sling the ball around. He's been doing it for years with Calvin Johnson and Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay for a little bit. Robert Woods has been a very productive receiver. He had 1,000 yards back-to-back, and then I think he had 900 last year, 6 touchdowns. I think this year he has another 1,000 yards, and he has 8 touchdowns. I think he's going to be the number 1 guy for that Rams offense that's going to be very productive. So I think Woods, you take him at round 4 or 5, where he's currently going. I like him over CeeDee Lamb. I like him over Tyler Lockett. I like him over Deontay Johnson. There's a lot of receivers there that I like him over. So if you're taking a Rams receiver and you're taking a guy that has a lot of upside, I'm going to go with Robert Woods. But now we are going to transition to some players that we think that you should avoid at any point in this draft, players that you are definitely staying away from. So, Nick, we're going to start things off with you. Let's talk about these 5 players that you think should not be drafted any means necessary.
Cody, I apologize, but in my opinion, Noah Fant will not finish as a top 10 tight end this year. I believe in the talent that is Noah Fant. I just do not believe in that Broncos offense geared by Teddy Bridgewater. I think that they're going to have a massive ceiling there, especially with a defensive head coach. I just do not trust them to be able to get the ball down the field using the tight end as much as they would like to. I think they're going to push to get Sutton back and recover from his injury, and Jerry Judy to exceed as that wide receiver, as that future wide receiver 1 for the team. I think that's where their offense is more so going to rely on. They also got Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon coming out of the backfield. So I don't think that Noah Fant will even be the check down guy. I feel like they have a good guy in Melvin Gordon. I like Javonte Williams as a running back. So Noah Fant, he's not someone that I'm necessarily avoiding, but I think, like I said, Tyler Higby would be someone I would rather target in these drafts. Joe Burrows currently being drafted at the QB 13. I think that's just a little too high for him. If you look at the rest of his division, you're looking at the Cleveland defense, you're looking at the Pittsburgh defense, and you're looking at the Baltimore defense. That is 6 crucial weeks where Joe Burrow is going to get the edge attack of his life from those in 6 games. He's coming off this terrible injury. As much as I like the pieces around him on offense, I just don't see Joe Burrow consistently hitting the ceiling that you would want at a quarterback when you're looking at a streaming option, where there's other guys around that ADP that I'd rather be drafting at that value, or other quarterbacks that I'd rather stream on a weekly basis. Adam Thielen, he's a very interesting receiver to me. He's being drafted as the wide receiver 16, but he had an incredible amount of touchdowns last year for an offense that turned the table to the rookie wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. I think he's going to see that regression. They just brought in Chris Herndon. Irv Smith suffered that injury, but I think that those are 2 main focal points of their offense, not even to mention Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook obviously is a top 5 running back in the league. He's going to be where their offense relies through. Adam Thielen is going to see that touchdown regression, and I just don't see him hitting that same target total where I can trust him as a wide receiver too. Chase Edmonds is very interesting to me. Where his current ADP is a little questionable. It's a lot of those guys you're looking to be a reliable backup on a bye week, or a guy that you're looking to plug in for a flex play. And Chase Edmonds is not someone I'm going to trust on a weekly basis. I don't think that Chase Edmonds will be able to hit the end zone on the goal line. They just brought in James Conner. On top of that, Cliff Kingsbury's offense mainly focuses around Kyler Murray being the rushing attack and never really lining the running back up behind the quarterback. So when you're looking at that offense, Kyler Murray is going to be the guy that scrambles. I do not trust him to check the ball down. I think that he's going to take off more than he is going to check down. I think Kyler has the massive upside. I think he could finish as the QB1, maybe the QB2 this season. I don't see Chase Edmonds hitting the ceiling everybody thinks he does and playing him on a weekly basis comfortably. Lastly, I have Jamar Chase as the wide receiver 1 that I am avoiding. Where his ADP at right now is above Chase Claypool, and to me, that's ridiculous. Chase Claypool is absolutely going to be the wide receiver 1 on that team. Deontay might out-target him, but Claypool is going to see that goal line red zone work. He's going to get those targets. He's got that big play upside. Jamar Chase, up until 2 weeks ago, was under Auden Tate in the depth chart. That meant that
Chase isn't on the Steelers though.
Jamar Chase, my apologies. Jamar Chase was under Auden Tate for the Bengals in their depth chart. Jamar Chase is someone that I'm actively avoiding as the wide receiver 32. As right now, they're looking at T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Auden Tate as their 3 outside threats. Jamar Chase obviously is going to see the role, but I just think that he's going to struggle for the first half of the season. It's his first time getting back into football, as even though he was drafted as early as he was, he took the year off. And I just don't trust drafting him at that value.
And Nick jumped ahead over there because I want to speak about Deontay Johnson a little bit because he's a guy that I'm avoiding. But let's start with Gus Edwards. We spoke about him a little bit. He's being drafted in round 5, 6. I think somebody's going to jump ahead and take him a little bit earlier, and that's kind of what I was speaking on earlier. I think somebody sees him as a running back 1. I don't see him as a running back 1. I like Giovanni Williams. I like Jamal Williams. I like Trey Sermon that Nick was talking about. I would rather take a fly on one of those running backs and take Gus Edwards early in round 5 or 4. So that's my piece on Gus Edwards. Number 4, I have A.J. Brown. And a lot of people are really, really, really high on A.J. Brown. And that's why I am not high on A.J. Brown. He's in an offense with a bell cow, a monster, a big bulldozer, Derrick Henry, who's going to rush for 2,000 yards this year. He's the heartbeat of that offense. They want to run the ball. They want to kill clock. Ryan Tannehill's a great quarterback. Ryan Tannehill's going to throw for 4,000 yards, but he's throwing a lot of those yards to Julio Jones. A.J. Brown's going to open up the field. They're each going to get theirs. They're both going to eat. They're going to both sit at the dinner table across from each other, but they're not at the head of the table. They're not the big dog. Derrick Henry's the big dog at this dinner table. A.J. Brown, he's at the other side of the dinner table, so I'm not comfortable taking A.J. Brown around 3 over a true wide receiver 1 like DK Metcalf or even Calvin Ridley or Amari Cooper. I think there's Justin Jefferson. I think there's other guys that I would rather target in rounds 3 or 4 than take A.J. Brown. Here's my piece with Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson gets a lot of targets. Deontay Johnson is going to catch a lot of balls. Deontay Johnson's going to drop a lot of balls. Deontay Johnson's hands are going to turn into bricks a couple times this season. Deontay Johnson got hurt last year. It wasn't a bad injury, but he did get hurt after like 2 plays, and he missed a couple games. Big Ben's kind of broken down a little bit. He's just going out there and doing what he can, but he's another one. He's like Logan and Wolverine. Like, he's on his last legs. So how good is Big Ben really going to be, especially with an offensive line that's kind of dismantled at this point? They had a couple guys retire and leave the team. So I'm not comfortable taking Diontae Johnson right now in round 4. He's the same issue that I have with A.J. Brown. A lot of these guys here, my issue is not that the player's not good or that they won't produce. My issue is that I think there's another player in that round or round later that I think is going to produce better. So for Diontae Johnson, I would rather take Robert Woods, who's going to be there. I'd rather take Cooper Kupp, who's going to be there. I'd rather take Julio Jones in round 4, who's going to be there. I won't touch Diontae Johnson in round 4. I'll touch him in end of round 5, round 6, not round 4. DJ Chark is not going to be the number 1. Laviska Shenault could be the number 1. Marvin Jones, who's been with Darrell Bell, could be the number 1. DJ Chark will not be the number 1. All 3 of those receivers are going in round 8 or 9 around the ADP. I'm not going to take the guy that I don't think is going to be the number 1 receiver on that offense. I think Shenault, he's phenomenal sophomore year. I think he's the guy that people should be targeting, not DJ Chark. So that's why I'm staying away from him. At number 1, Kenny Dalladay, his transition to the Giants, it's been messy. He re-injured his hamstring, I think it was, a few weeks ago at camp. He hasn't really got a lot of throwing work with Daniel Jones, not in any preseason games. So the first time they actually really work together might be week 1. I'm just not comfortable with it. The Giants offense hasn't shown me enough to where that they're going to be productive and that Galladay is going to get 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. I just don't trust that. I don't trust the injuries, the reoccurring hamstrings. I don't trust the offense. I don't trust Daniel Jones as much as I would like to trust him because he was one of the guys I really liked last year. So again, I'm not going to take Kenny Galladay when I could take Cortland Sutton. I could take Jerry Judy. I could take Laviska Shenault that I just spoke about. I could take a fly on one of the rookies. I could take Devontae Smith. I think there's other guys there. Tyler Boyd. I like Tyler Boyd a lot. And T. Higgins. They're all right there. So I'm not going to take Kenny Galladay when I'm not comfortable taking Kenny Galladay. So, Cody, give us your top 5 players that you think needs to be avoided in drafts.
Kicking off for me at number 5 is Melvin Gordon. I'm a massive Javonte Williams fan. I own him just about everywhere. For me, Melvin Gordon, this is the last year of his contract. He wore down later on in the season last year. I just see Javonte Williams taking over this backfield by the end of October, early November, and just running away with it. He's just way too talented. His biggest issue was blitz pickup, and he's proven in the preseason that is not an issue. I am just avoiding Melvin Gordon. I just don't see him getting enough touches to even pay off a mid-level RB3 value. Going on at number 4, Justin Herbert. He's a fine quarterback option. He had a fantastic year last year. He lost his quarterback coach. He has mentioned on several occasions how much of a help he was. I think it's going to drastically change his fantasy output. I don't have him as a quarterback 1 in fantasy. That's my personal opinion. It wouldn't shock me if he finishes as a top 10 quarterback. Personally, I have him at quarterback 13. I think he's being way overdrafted with other guys behind him that I believe will have better seasons. He brings back everybody. Austin Eckler's a great pass catching back out of the backfield. Keenan Allen's a target monster. I just don't see him replicating what he did last year, and I think that's what he would have to do to achieve that quarterback 8 draft slot. Next for me, number 3, the Buccaneers running backs. The only one that I would even consider drafting is Giovanni Bernard, and that's because he is etched into his role as a third down back. He is going to be out there in third down situations. Tom Brady's talked super highly of him. He loves him. Obviously, if you've watched football, played fantasy football, Tom Brady always loves his little third down scat back receiver, the receiving back. I just want no part of Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette. They're going to take away from each other. Both of them are plotters. Leonard Fournette can catch the ball somewhat. Ronald Jones cannot. I have no interest in either of those guys. I just don't see them producing any kind of consistency at all throughout the season. Moving on, number 2 for me is T.Y. Hilton. He's already hurt. I mean, wide receiver 59, you're pretty much getting him for free, but the dude is already hurt. Last year, he started out extremely slow. He was on everybody's waiver wire by week 6 or 7. He ended the season fairly strong. It took him a while to get his rapport down with Phillip Rivers. Now you got a new quarterback in Carson Wentz. I don't know. I mean, he's hurt right now, so obviously he's not getting those precious reps in with Wentz, who's been hurt already as well. I just don't see T.Y. Hilton being a draftable wide receiver. And number one for me, it's the Buffalo Bills running backs. It's just like the Buccaneers. I don't trust either of these guys as far as I could throw them. And obviously, I can't throw a professional football player anywhere. Zach Moss, he's a plotter. He offers no upside in the passing game. Devin Singletary offers more in the passing game, but he is a tiny back. He cannot run the ball more than 10 to 12 times a game. Also, let's talk about the giant elephant in the room, Josh Allen. When they get near the goal line, he's going to run the ball in the end zone. He's not going to hand it off and give these guys touchdowns. These are two guys, I X them off of all my drafts. I won't touch them. I won't touch the Buccaneers backs, save for possibly Giovanni Bernard, depending on where you can get him. For me, the RBBCs, running back by committee groups, I want no part of them.
So those are our 5 players. Each of us have them. Listen to whoever you want to listen to, and hopefully things pan out. You choose the players that we think will break out and kind of avoid those players that we think will not pan out. So that is our debut episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please tweet about it. Follow us on Instagram. Let your friends know that this is the fantasy show that they should be listening to every Tuesday, every Friday. You can do the audio on iTunes, Anchor, or Spotify. You can watch us on YouTube on those days. And it's every single Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern time on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. We're going to give you that hour. We're going to give you daily fantasy picks. We're going to give you your start sits. We're going to give you every late thing that you need to succeed and to hopefully help you guys win some money that we're trying to do together, because that's what our goal is, to help you guys out, to help that fantasy community out. If you do want to follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, the @ is PrimeTimeFF. Pod. You could find that just about anywhere. We have a Linktree on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find a Linktree. That's the links to all our podcasts, our YouTube, social media, everything else that you could need to follow us and support us. And we do love all of you that support us already, and we do appreciate that. So thank you for making this a success so far. So I'm going to kick it off to Cody. Cody, anything else you want to say? Parting words, any plugs? I'm giving you the floor at the moment.
I just hope we don't have any more injuries. I just want to wrap all my players in bubble wrap before the season starts. Like, just don't hit each other. Like, that's all I care about. I've lost enough people already.
Nick, any last plugs for you, parting words that you want to say for the audience?
Guys, us 3 got a big draft tomorrow, so I'm sure you'll be hearing about it for the next, 17 plus weeks. So hope you enjoy it. We'll be sharing our results with you guys, and, you can let us know who did the best, who did the worst. Give us your feedback. We want to hear it.
Yeah, we're going to have Nick does a great job with these graphics so far, so give him your applause. I didn't do the graphics. I did all the producing on the show, so if you're watching it on the YouTube, I did all the transitioning, which is why a little bit of it was late at times, but Nick does a great job with the graphics. So he'll put up a graphic on Twitter after our draft, probably Thursday, and you could actually vote in a poll as to who you think had the best draft, and we'll see what you guys think. And we're going to talk about that on our next show. Our next show will be Friday, September 3rd. So we're looking forward to that and to what comes to that. And then we're looking forward for the rest of the season. Thank you guys again. I've been Nick Jacoby. That's been Nick Capsalas. That's Cody Repass. And we'll talk to you guys on Friday.